I don't think you can ever prepare to get to the finals of a competition like the GFA. What I would say is that you can prepare the best as you can. And if it happens, it happens.
Welcome everyone to the Augustine Strings Wind Up, second season, first episode with Kevin Loh, who's a phenomenal guitarist and a big friend of mine, and I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Just before we start, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, Augustine Strings YouTube channel, Instagram page and everything to know when the next episodes come up and to know about Augustine Strings, the projects, the strings and everything, the artists. I know you know how it works, but I have to explain to the audience.
Sure.
So for every string that Kevin changed, there will be a different topic. And by the way, Kevin today will use Augustine Regal Blue. Okay.
All right.
First string, it's an Entree.
Okay.
Second string, we're gonna talk about beginnings. Third string, we're gonna talk about this guitar that you brought today. Fourth string, we're gonna talk about dreams. Fifth string, new thing. Not artificial intelligence questions anymore, but audience questions. So on Instagram, we asked people to send Kevin some questions, and I chose some of them that I'm gonna ask you later. And then the sixth string is the one, my name is Edu with an E, and E string, sixth string, I can ask whatever I want.
All right, okay.
So, but actually we're here in New York City. Kevin is in New York City. You don't live here.
I don't live here, no. I'm currently based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And what are you doing here?
Oh, I just happened to be in the area. I gave a concert for the Brooklyn Classical Guitar Society yesterday night at the time of this recording. And yeah, that was my final performance for this sort of mini tour that I've been doing for the month of October. So I'm actually heading back to Wisconsin on Monday.
After how long?
After 1 month.
Cool. And actually, this is something that I always wanted to ask you, which is like, how is life being on road? Like, how do you feel like being a soloist and traveling everywhere, meeting new people and playing nice concerts?
Yeah, it's been an incredible experience. I think it's a lot of fun to be able to travel, see the world, and meet a lot of people along the way. Mm-hmm. For me, it isn't necessarily so much about the idea of being a soloist necessarily, but it's just that idea of being on stage and taking that opportunity where, you know, everyone is together and we're just having a good time and we're sort of exchanging ideas within the music. A lot of the time I see us performers more as sort of moderators, where we are there to help unpack the musical ideas of musical works that, you know, the audience may or may not know about, and we are sort of just there to just lead the way.
Talking about this like relation when you're on stage and with the audience, like we have to start somewhere. Yeah. And like you sound very experienced. You probably played, I don't know, hundreds of concerts, and we had to start somewhere.
Sure.
And I really don't know how to ask you this, but how important you think it is to like play concerts, even if in an intimate space, when you're starting learning the guitar? Well, and how to get this concert, you know?
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's where I was very fortunate with my upbringing. I think I had the fortune of undertaking the guitar, sort of the beginnings of guitar with my family. And it was that idea that I would normally be just playing for the family, and when, you know, friends are visiting, and we would just be like, hey, do you have a minute? Let's have Kevin just play through one or two pieces for you, just for the evening's entertainment, like after dinner or something. Thank you. And yeah, that was basically the idea that there was nothing to lose, and you would give, you know, every chance you get, you know, give it a shot to sort of run through some bit of repertoire that you're working on. And because at that point, when you're first starting off, it's not like you have an abundance of opportunities to run through repertoire, right? So I think it's just, again, nothing to lose. And for me, my personal background, there's always this discussion also about YouTube as well. For for me, it was that idea of, learning how to get through full runs of pieces from start to finish, under a quite scrutinizing environment, which is in front of the camera, to just practice running through that, and just seeing how that goes. And the more you do it, the more you get used to it. Right?
Yeah, and you're recording videos for YouTube for a long time, right?
It has
Even
been
when
a
you
while.
were, I was reading about you before.
Yeah, right.
Studying
exactly.
you.
Yeah, sure, exactly.
And, like, you even got like a position at a school because of your YouTube channel.
Exactly. So the YouTube channel first started when my father had the incredible foresight to kind of just record and track all the sort of videos that we were doing. Yeah, it was just for the memories, because at first this was really just a family endeavor. But then slowly and surely we started to share some of these activities online, and that ended up grabbing the attention of a particular school in the UK known as the Yehudi Menuhin School. And they had just opened a relatively young guitar program, and they had written to us through the channel saying like, hey, would you be interested in applying? So we went over. They helped me very much. They provided, firstly, they accepted
you.
and they also helped with some financial support, because moving, to the UK from Singapore was quite a daunting prospect at the age of 12. None of that would have been possible basically without, the YouTube channel.
Second string is beginnings,
Yes.
of course. But also, I don't know when you started taking part in competitions, and I don't actually want to know, I do want to know, but the competitions and everything. I wanted to know your perspective as a competitor, and what did you learn from taking part in competitions?
Usually when it comes to competitions, I do have a couple of thoughts in general that, when people ask, or perhaps some, when I'm teaching someone and they also ask the same question. Usually when we hit the competition stage or start to think about it, the student or whoever is playing has reached a certain point where they think, okay, yeah, I've made some sort of progress, let's put it to the test and see how we go, because they feel like good enough about it, right? Because at the beginning, you don't think about competitions necessarily right from the get-go. But when a student first thinks about competitions, I immediately go like, okay, let's catch our breath, take a second, and sort of just evaluate, like, what's the purpose of doing the competition? Because it has to be, in my opinion, very intentional. I don't know, this might be a little bit of a hot take, but then there are times where people say like, oh, I just want to compete, for the experience. And I don't know, I'm sure, it's circumstantial from person to person, so I don't say always like, oh, I don't agree with that. But a part of me does sort of question that thought process a little bit. Because there is a difference between concert playing and competition playing. And you very well know this. In order to compete, we're looking for consistency, cleanliness, and sometimes that takes away some of that room to just push and take some risks for the sake of the musicality, right? So what that means is that you're trying to sort of lock in and force a certain type of performance that's clean, and you gotta make that very consistent. And the more you lock that in, you could argue that there is less room for creativity as a result, because all you're doing is trying to mechanically repeat the same type of performance again and again and again.
But don't you think, like, of course you said it's different when you're playing a competition, when you're playing a concert, but don't you think ideally it should match?
Yes. Oh.
Like, of course it is a competition, but like we're still making music,
Yes, no, absolutely. But again, I think it's just an idea that the situation is never going to be that ideal.
I know.
And a lot of things are working against us right at the beginning anyway. There are a lot of things that we need to learn how to overcome before we get to that point where we can sort of start to see the light of the horizon and go like, okay, that's what it takes to merge the two. But it's actually quite a long road in my opinion.
And how do you think the competitions helped you, like, being on stage, because of course you learn a lot by being a competitor or going on stage to compete. What did you learn from it?
The more you do competitions, the more you realize that at the beginning you will start to feel those nerves about having to make it prim and proper, like your performance, I mean. But it is okay to ultimately start to merge that performance and concert mentality. The competing and the concert mentality into one thing, where you can afford to take risks, because what everyone wants to hear is good music ultimately. So for me, it was just learning how to let go, and sometimes doing a one-off like competition, you feel those nerves, you walk away, and you wait a long time before you do the next competition, and those nerves come back. So sometimes it's tough if you space it out. But then what I felt was doing a couple in a row just to learn how to calm the nerves a little bit. That actually helped me.
There are thousands of questions I wanted to ask you,
Sure.
but we don't have like 24 hour podcast.
Yeah.
We have to move to the third string.
Sounds good.
Which is, we're going to talk about your guitar here.
Okay.
And also a partnership you have, right?
Yes, that's correct, yeah. So the guitar that I have here is made by Altamira Guitars. The owner of Altamira Guitars, Hansen Yao, was the one who helped put this guitar together. I'm very fortunate to have this partnership with Altamira Guitars. I actually got this guitar, as you can see in here. It says 2023 in there. And the idea was, I was just starting off my sort of postgrad degree with Professor René Izquierdo at the time. And we were discussing scale length, and with my hand, we were thinking of adjusting from a full size to a 640. Cool. And we were thinking about like potential competition plans as well, because that summer coming up was the GFA that I ended up doing. And we were like, okay, we have these bits of repertoire we want to work on. The 640 will make it easier to do that.
Just a parenthesis, I don't know if we have to explain, but the normal size is
650,
like millimeters, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then this one is 640, a little smaller.
Yeah, it's a little smaller, so it's not as strenuous on the hand. I wrote to Altamira and asked if there was a possibility, like to see if we could get a guitar that would fit the 640 scale, and in terms of my needs in terms of the colors that I was hoping to produce. And this was what came out of that sort of collaboration. And it served me very well. It's almost been 2 years, and it's opened up really, really well in terms of the sound. I was very lucky this past summer as well, where I got to go to China. And I was there for just under 2 weeks to help sort of share a little bit more about this guitar, because it's a really great instrument, and Altamira Guitars did an incredible job in organizing this sort of tour. Went to a couple cities, and I also taught a little bit. And in the spaces that we got to perform, the guitar actually projected very well. It's surprisingly light. I don't know if you've carried it earlier. You tried it, right? So yeah, it's got great balance, great sound. So it served me very well. Yeah.
Nice. And I'm very curious, and I want to know, how did this relationship between you and Altamira start? And how does it work? Like, you call them, you're like, hey, I need a new guitar, and they just send you a new guitar?
No. It's not that simple. Now, Altamira used to organize a festival in Hong Kong for a couple of years. And I actually happened to have some family out there. And whenever there was an opportunity to go out, I would go. But there was one particular year, I think it was 2017. It was one of the big years for the festival. They had quite a few artists. Actually, René happened to be performing that year also. I asked if I could, since I was there, if I could perform also. And they kindly let me kind of open the concert for René. René was sharing a concert with Jose Maria Gallardo del Rey. I had known René for a little bit at that point as well as Altamira, and we were kind of just there, kind of expanding the dialogue and the relationship with them. And slowly but surely, we hit that point where it was prime time to start a collaboration of sorts. And there, slowly but steadily, we hit this point, especially over the past 2 or 3 years, where a lot of the concerts and the competing happened and getting traction with the guitar. So.
Kevin, moving on to the fourth string. We're going to talk about dreams.
Okay, sounds good.
And I could ask you like general questions about dreams, but I want to ask you, like, you've been doing a lot. I don't know how many dreams you had when you were a kid or like a young adult, but I want to know, what was a dream that you had that recently came true?
When I was younger, I don't think I really knew what I wanted. But I think that's where I'm thankful for the whole process that I went through with my folks, where it was like, you may not know what you want, but at least try to go about, a couple of things and just at least go about it consistently. There is that. But I think a recent sort of goal for me, it really is that idea that in the past year or so after the GFA happened, getting to the finals. That was a huge goal.
Cool.
Because like you were helping out at that point. You literally saw me backstage where it was like, oh my gosh, this is happening. And I don't know what to do. I was like, I wasn't low-key. I wasn't freaking out. But
you look very chill.
Yeah? Well, that's good. What I will say is the last round was, I felt the least nervous, surprisingly.
That's cool.
But in hindsight, I understand. Thanks. In hindsight, I feel like at that point, I had nothing to lose. The fact that I made it that far was already incredible to me. And I just needed to perform it, my heart and soul, and just give it my best shot.
Cool. And like, in terms of not even preparation, but like, okay, one of your dreams was to get to the GFA finals. How do you prepare to get to the GFA? I don't know if that's a question, but like, how is a day in Kevin's life in like playing the guitar, preparing for a big dream?
I'm gonna turn the head on the question a little bit. I don't think you can ever prepare to get to the finals of a competition like the GFA.
Okay.
What I would say is that you can prepare the best as you can. And if it happens, it happens. Okay. Again, by nature of you doing your best performance, but ultimately it's the jury that will decide who they let through, because you could have given your best performance.
But also, like, as someone who was watching it, like, how do you reach that level? I really want to know, what do you do?
Sure,
what is your secret?
Sure. What I would say for me, most recently, the thing that I've been working on a lot actually has been mental strategies and mental practice. For example, first thing in the day, it used to be the case that I would get some warm-up or technical exercises done before like I start the day. But instead, now I usually find myself heading to like a coffee shop or somewhere in the morning that I know I can just get a little bit of a peaceful start to the morning. I grab my iPad out and I just practice without my guitar. And that can be an old piece or a new one where I'm actually just figuring out fingerings just right there and then. Because one thing that my dad taught me in the past was to not play faster than you can think. And the idea there is that if you've consciously ensured that you've organized yourself, you could make that as solid as possible, your sort of preparation, so that when you sit down, you can already play without having to deal with much thinking or figuring out.
Moving on to the fifth string.
Okay.
Many people send questions and I needed to choose. I'm sorry if I'm not reading your question, but how do you memorize everything? And you play many pieces, and you remember pieces that you played, I don't know, 15 years ago.
I think I like to think about the way I approach memory. Like, I break it down to 3 parts. There is the muscle memory, and then there's the conscious bit when it comes to like actively trying to remember what you're playing. And then there's also the oral, like the oral memory of just remembering how the piece sounds. And that's where, again, it kind of draws back to fretboard harmony and practicing scales and chord progressions and simple cadences. Because what happens there is, like, the leaning in of tension becomes instinctive. You're literally developing your ear towards how you do that, without thinking too much. So there is the oral component of hearing the piece. There's the conscious bit where you're studying the score, like mental practicing. A strategy there could be to just print out the score, like physical copies of the page, and kind of just put it out, and then kind of just map it all out and use color highlighters and things. So you have like a general understanding of the structure, for example. And then there's the muscle memory bit where you do your repetitions, your reps, and all that good stuff. So for me, I feel, those are the 3 components that I actively think about when it comes to cultivating good memory.
So you do practice it. It's not a gift.
I don't think it's a gift at all, but yeah.
And another one that I wanted to ask is actually related to the dreams question.
Yeah.
What is your biggest career goal?
I think one of the big goals for me is to, hopefully, I never know where life would take me, but eventually to head back to Singapore, to start some sort of a conservatory level program. There also used to be a festival. Unfortunately, that's not happening at the moment, but that's also something that I would love to be involved with to revive the festival. A part of my development, I attribute, like, during my early years anyway, I attribute to the festival and the opportunities that I was very fortunate to receive. For example, my first major masterclass was when I was 6 years old with Yehudi Gutterres. So I would love to be able to essentially recreate that sort of environment and to allow others to have that opportunity to experience what I got to experience back then. So,
but in Singapore or
in Singapore.
Home. Okay.
And I think it's not just Singapore as well. I think many countries in that region of Southeast Asia, we're all looking to be able to raise the bar to hit that next level of playing. And all the countries in that region, we all have our own little thing going on, but we're all trying to essentially help each other out to grow, I think. So
I'm moving to my questions now.
Okay, all right, let's do that. Okay.
But I think this tells a lot about you, and you're also very into charity and non-profit organizations and helping others. And you are a person that everybody loves, I feel. Everybody loves Kevin.
I don't know, that's very kind of you to say.
What is your relation with friends? How much you appreciate having friends and hanging out with friends, other than playing the guitar, because you're always playing, but do you hang out a lot too?
I think, no, that's very kind, firstly, what you just said there. I think musically, it's very important, actually, because with my music, there's a lot of emotion that I reflect upon when I practice. And these emotions come from a place of social interaction, because making music is ultimately a social endeavor, and it's always great to be able to make music with friends. So that's something that I cherish dearly. And all the more so because with classical guitar, it's often the case where you're playing solo, right? But it's also understanding that although you're performing solo on stage, we can never forget that many people helped in our journey in getting us to be on that stage. And that it's never a solo endeavor. Never, never, never. The minute we forget that, we've lost sight of who we are and why we're doing what we're doing.
So. I think that's very nice. There's this ideal or idea that classical musicians are always practicing and always focused, and like you can't go out because you lose your focus?
There will always be a place for that where, you know, you have to put in the time to practice. No one is saying that you shouldn't practice, right?
Just hang out.
Right.
Just go to the bar,
right?
and you'll be done.
Yeah. But it's that idea that we develop a healthy relationship with practice, because, you know, if unchecked, that can lead to something potentially toxic down the road. But it's also knowing that, yes, you can get engrossed with the practice and really enjoy it, but there are times where it's also a mental challenge where you have to say to yourself, okay, I'm gonna stop things here whilst things are good. Go out, see the world, hang out with friends, because as much as there is the technical element of practice, there's also the musical and also the emotional element. And where we draw inspiration from that comes from our daily interactions, right?
And I also want to know about your projects, your like your charity actions that
Sure.
I know you're very into. And as you said in the beginning, like playing intimate concerts and like not in only huge for big audiences, but like, yeah, I wanted to know about this.
Yeah, no, sure.
Part of Kevin.
So a lot of the things that I have done, they weren't so recent, I would say, but they all have been mainly within the Asian region, where there are a couple of charities back home that I have helped to sort of raise funds for. There was one notable concert a couple of years ago where it was a full-on sort of solo recital in the Esplanade Concert Hall, which is like one of two like main concert halls in Singapore. So it was like some solo stuff. It was with orchestra also for 1 or 2 pieces, and we raised like shy of 150 grand USD for a couple of charities. And these charities, for me, they hold a special place in my heart, because these charities work on giving underprivileged like children and families an opportunity to be exposed to the arts, and they get access to free like lessons in arts and craft, music, or any sort of creative like arts in general. And for me, it's just so important to be able to share, you know, these opportunities that, you know, we in the creative arts get to experience, you know, and allow others to get in touch with their emotional side and at least experience that as well, because that isn't necessarily something that they get lots of exposure with. You know, if sometimes in the worst case scenarios, if they're worrying about, you know, what food that they can put on the table, you know, and, you know, sometimes just to give them like some sort of a relief to think about other things and have fun a little bit, you know, this is the way to go, right? So no, for me, this is a great way to do that. And going to the other part of your question, when it comes to slightly more sort of intimate settings for performances and things like that, in Singapore, I work with a couple of collectives. They don't use that term per se, but there's one group where it's a chamber music group where we have like a couple of instruments that we work together regularly, and they come up with quite a few interesting like ideas. So there was one group where they pair like music and food, music and wine. And then another concept was there's like a set list, and like it's almost a jukebox type concept where you have people draw lots and they form the program as they go. And it's a lot of just audience involvement, but using sort of classical music as the ingredients to put that together. Because in Singapore, I think one of the things we work on really is audience engagement and raising awareness towards, you know, classical music in general. I think it's something that people don't necessarily know that they want or need, but we are trying to find creative avenues to sort of introduce that into the audiences in Singapore.
Nice. Kevin, I see you're finishing your 6th string. Thank you so much for being.
No.
Let's see. I would actually first episode of the Wind Up with Alan Liu.
Yes.
And I was like, Kevin, if you're listening.
I remember I saw
want
that
you
bit of the
here.
episode. I saw, and here we are. We finally made it.
And I'm so happy we were able to do this. I was waiting for this moment.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And can you tell us what will those strings be used for?
What will these strings be used for?
Yeah, like what's coming projects?
Yeah, no, sure. So at this point, I'm actually heading back to Milwaukee. And before the end of the semester, there are a couple of chamber music projects that I'm currently working on that we are going to be rehearsing to really like bring it up to speed so that when the performances happen in the spring, they'll be in tip-top shape. It's just because in October, I've been away and I haven't had the chance to rehearse so much, but those rehearsals will be happening. Now, one thing that I can talk about, a little bit of a sneak peek here, is a piece for guitar quartet and soprano saxophone called Light Perpetuum by the British guitarist and composer Laura Snowdon, who is also a dear friend of mine because she also used to study in the Menuhin School, and that's how I got to meet her. That piece, amongst a couple other pieces as well, is in the works. It's in the works. So yeah,
Cool.
so
Nice.
a lot of rehearsing next month. So
Well, that's it.
yeah,
I want to thank everyone for being here with us. One more episode of the Augustine Strings Wind Up. Make sure you subscribe to the Augustine Strings YouTube channel, Instagram page, everything. Subscribe and follow Kevin, and you can follow me if you want. And that's it. Stay tuned for the next episodes of the second season of the Augustine Strings Wind Up.